really want to unpack in this session is around what is compassion and how do we start to be real about compassion. What I'd love you to do is just unpack the word compassion a little bit for us if you could.
When we think about compassion, we're thinking about Jesus himself, who personified what it means to be compassionate. You know, we read time and time again that Jesus did what he did out of the love of the Father, because the love of the Father was in him. And you know that the word that's used for compassion comes from that's kind of being deeply moved. It's like a bowel movement of us in some ways, and it's just like I'm just so I cannot but act. And how do we help our children? How do we grow as families in compassionate actions? Because it can't just be about words. It has to be about action. And you know, one of the things I constantly remind myself is, you know, time and time again in the New Testament we see these two words, one another. And Paul talks about these one another sayings, and Jesus talks about these one another sayings: love one another, build one another up in love. And one of the phrases that always sticks in my mind when I think about compassion is acceptance. Accept one another just as in the same way that Christ has accepted you. What does it mean to accept? It means to accept is to recognize that we are moved with compassion for one another, irrespective of race, age, gender, lifestyle choices that we choose, and it is an active word. We choose to accept. We choose to act in compassion towards others. And so the question is, how do we help our families? How do we help our children to have it in their minds, that mindset of accepting, of choosing to act with compassion towards others? And I think it first comes, I think, in how, as parents, we might do that in our family home. So in our family home, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay, we say to our son, it's okay to be angry or to be upset about something, but what you do with that is something that we want to talk about.
How do we start to help our kids, or nurture our children to be accepting of people who are maybe different to themselves?
My children will learn so much about the world, so much about the character of God, actually, from how I treat their mum. So how do I, and that's not to put pressure on us because we get it wrong, but even to be able to model, I'm sorry, that says so much. And how we are compassionate to one another, it then overflows into how we are compassionate for our street, for our school, for our community, and for the world. And I think it's really helping our children and our families see the bigger picture. That actually, we turn on the news and there is so much brokenness in our world. There is so much need. And rather than being just overwhelmed by that or allowing it to even just be on the television, it's actually allowing that compassion to rise up again and go, we can do something about that. And that may be praying, that may be doing something practically for people, but also it's allowing that space to be angry, to be upset, to allow that compassion kind of rise up to then call us into action. And we often talk about when we're talking about building faith at home and foundations to build into our lives, and the foundation of being real is so important. So often as a parent, we want to shelter and protect our children. And I get that. I want to protect my two young children. But there's also a reality in life that actually we need to give windows into the world. And actually in an area at home, in a protected area, we can talk, we can pray. But it's allowing our children and young people that space to ask questions. Sometimes the questions we don't like from our children is the why questions. Why is that happening? So I think giving that space, but allowing that reality of life to that our children can explore that is really, really important.
I believe compassion is, there's no way you can have compassion without doing something. It's love. It compels you to ask yourself that question, what can I do? Once you said, it comes like an origin from your bowels, you ask yourself, so what am I going to do about it? When you see that situation that you're compelled, you have this great compassion about, even like what Christ did in the Bible, it compels you to ask, what am I going to do about it? Just like The founder of Compassion, for example, Everett in 1952, when he went to Korea and he saw those children, sleeping on the street, and, the next day some vans would just come and pick up the dead bodies. It compelled him. He asked himself, what am I going to do? And it's an act where you're compelled to act, to do something about it. And I remember the story about a lady called Grace. There were these two young orphans. Well, at that point, she didn't know they were orphans, aged 8 and 6, She is a cook in one of the local centers in Tanzania. So the children would come, she would just notice that and there are these 2 extra children that were not registered in the program, but she will give them food. So one day she just got talking to them and she realized they're actually orphans, age 8 and 6. And, she was compelled to do something. And then she, took it and spoke to the pastor of the local center. And through the right channels and speaking to the right authorities, she was able to start fostering the children. So we'll call them the children have met grace. Grace as a person, but grace in God. But it shows, and I remember the story of I think it's 18-year-old Ikoli in Bangladesh. During the COVID period, he realized people in his community, that they were suffering. And he organized himself and his 3 friends, that's where they started. And they were able to gather some donations and distribute it to the family. So it is something that, it's a ripple effect. There's no way you'll feel real compassion without doing something about it, in prayers, in giving, in an act of service.
I think one of the things that is important is to foster a culture of thankfulness and gratitude for what we have. One of the prayers that I remember once praying with our son, he was about 3 years old, was, Jesus, we thank you for our home. We thank you that we've got a roof over our head, and we pray for those families and for those children that don't at this time. And my son was just like, what do you mean? What do you mean that there are children with no homes and no roofs and no toys? Well, what should we do about it? Maybe they could come and live with us. And there was immediately for him this connection between we've got something and we really appreciate it and we're really thankful for that, and there are other people that don't have that. Then there was a response to an action. Well, what can we do about that? One of the things we talk about to our son about is the program with the children that we support through Compassion. They get education, they get health care, and we get that in the UK. We get great education, great health care, and so many children around the world do not. And it was a shock to my son, and so my son wants us to support the boys that we support through Compassion, because he has something that he's thankful for, and here are some children that don't have it, and he wants to do something about it.
With my kids, it's just very similar to what you said. It's letting them understand, as in God blesses us to be a blessing unto others. It's when they were little and you tell them to share something with their sibling and they go, no. So I told one day my son to hold his fist and he held it. I think I gave him something to hold and he held it. I was like, okay, dearie, I want to give you this now. Can I put it in your palm? He said, no, mommy. I said, how can I put it? He opened. I was like, good, you see. Good. So if you don't live your life out of what you have, sharing, sharing with others, sharing with your sibling, that stage I told him, you're not going to receive anything back. He said, okay, mommy, I will, and he shared. And that translates, in fact, to the extent as in if anybody comes to the house, even the toys that they like, it now became like a competition between both of them. Their favorite toys, even if the person doesn't need it, they want to keep the person because it was, I want the person to have this too. I want the person to have that too, I'm not doing it out of obligation, but, out of care and out of love, God has given me this, has blessed me with this, and I need to bless, someone else too out of it.
Really good. When I was, I had the privilege of going and seeing one of my sponsored children, Boaz, in Kenya. And I remember taking a sort of little backpack full of bits and pieces over to him. And I was really challenged because the moment I gave Boaz the backpack, he immediately started to take things out and give them to his siblings. Yeah. Just generosity. And it was almost this sort of sense of Boaz going, I now have, you don't, but I just want to share what I have.
when we're talking about this, it's really important, like we said, to expose our children to what's going on in the world. And we often talk about giving windows. And windows are great, and we want to give windows that our children and our young people get to see what's going on. But I really believe we also need to create doors, because we don't just want to see what's going on in the world. We don't just want to see the hurt, but we actually want to realize that, again, that compassion. So as families, how do we create some doors? And of course, we can't meet every need. Of course, we can't go everywhere, but we can create a door into someone's life. So not just seeing through the window, but actually creating those doors of opportunity to allow compassion to rise. Again, we're talking about it's the with, together as families. How can we walk through that door to actually meet people's needs and to just walk the journey with people?
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks very much, guys. Great points. Love it. Practical, down to earth. Thank you so much.